whole heart. A whole heart. And the notes are not yet on the screen, so if you guys want to work on it, I know you guys do magic over there. We're going to start in Deuteronomy 18 and then flow down to 13 real quick. So, and we won't be doing a whole lot of jumping up and down. So you guys know. So I'm calling this kind of like a half message between the Lord and me. So this is something that I have been wanting to share with you and to talk to you about. And then, of course, he's the boss. So he says, well, here's what I want you to talk about. And what you want to talk about goes at the end of that, what I want you to talk about. And I was like, yes, sir. He always makes me look good. And so what I have for us is going to be a little bit, we're going to eventually land on Deuteronomy 6, on the Shema, the whole heart, right? To love the Lord with all your heart. But I want us to start in Deuteronomy 18 and then jump to 13, because these two passages speak of the prophetic setup and ministry that was to happen in Israel, beginning with Moses. So, Deuteronomy 18, verse 22. It says, when a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not come about or come true, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. Or that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. So let me read that again. When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not come about or come true, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. You realize that the word thing here is davar, which also means the word. If the word does not come true, that is a word that did not come from the Lord. And then in the last part of it, it says that the prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You shall not be afraid of him. You shall not honor him. That's the idea. In Deuteronomy 13, beginning in verse 1, we have another way to test the person who has a prophetic word. So in 22, it says, if the word that he gives does not come to pass, that is not a word from the Lord. Here in chapter 13, we have that, and then another way of testing. Deuteronomy 13, it says, if a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder comes true. You know, in 13, the case was it didn't come true. But now here, it comes true. So you're like, all right, what's the problem? Big problem, though. It says, and the sign of or the wonder comes true, concerning which he spoke to you, saying, let us go after other gods, whom you have not known. Or in other words, with whom you don't have a covenant. That's really what known the Lord means. With whom you don't have a covenant, and let us serve them. Verse 3, you shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you to find out if you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. A whole heart. So, not only a test for a prophetic word is whether it comes true or not. Even if it does come true, you still need to see, is this leading me to the Lord or not? Now, no one will come into a place like this and say, hey, y'all, I want you to worship, you insert other gods. Oh, but we do have other kinds of gods in the Western world. And let me tell you one that is very prominent here today in America. Anger. Anger is huge. Anger is a god. Did you know that? Anger speaks to you, makes promises to you, right? It promises you to deliver you. It'll deliver you from all your problems if you just do this one little thing in anger. Prophesies your future. You're going to feel good. It's huge. So we wouldn't come in here, right, and give a prophetic word, or no one from Sukkah will give you a prophetic word, and then lead you to check the website of www.othergods.com. We're not going to do that. Nobody's going to do that. But you need to realize, is this, in the end, when everything, you weigh the word, you weigh down the word, you judge the word, right? That's what Corinthians says. We judge the word. We apply discernment. We apply scripture to it. And if in the end, this thing is leading to something that is just not quite the Lord, even though it's couched in all kinds of spiritual words, even if the person itself thinks he is leading you to the Lord, but if it really isn't, this is not a word from the Lord. And you shall not honor it or fear it. You shall not fear it. This is easier said than done. This takes a very mature community in the Lord and in the gifts of the Spirit. You see, that's why 1 Corinthians, Paul wants to get to the gifts, but he can't do that. He has to deal with the real root of the problem, which is the immaturity, and he talks about it in chapter 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then he begins to get into their problems. Then they have immoral problems. And then they have relational problems. And then he finally wants to address about the thing that he says, this is what I want you to desire the most, that you should prophesy. So all of the rest of the stuff is background, maturity, relationships, walking in a way that is pleasing to the Lord. All of that is a pre-qualifier so you can move in the prophetic. That's how important it is. And of course, that's why it is such a target of the enemy as well. So Moses here is giving us some foundational paradigms for the prophetic to be able to function well in a community. Now, I thought about this because last night, Michelle and I were watching a presentation, a program by a Jewish man where he was interviewing 2-3 guys with a what I call the move in the prophetic. Not only do they, like every believer, know how to move in the prophetic, but these guys are actually functioning in the office of prophets. It was really good stuff, really good sounding stuff. I was trusting this ministry that they vetted these people But of course, I'm judging the words myself. I'm listening, and then the Lord brought to mind these two passages. The reason is these guys were, as they were speaking, they were kind of validating. This is an interview. You only have a certain amount of time. So they were kind of validating what they themselves had spoken in the past and how it had come to pass. But of course, that's not enough, as we just read Deuteronomy 18. And so I began to allow the Spirit to take my heart and see where He was leading it with the words that this guy was saying. And as I did that, I realized, yeah, this guy really is leading me to the Lord. Not in fear, not in anger, not in self-promoting, right? A lot of people do that, especially when they're on TV. And it was leading to the heart of the Lord. So I was at peace. And I was blessed. Both Michelle and I. Michelle, unfortunately, couldn't be here with us today. She just couldn't stay away from me all this week, and she got the flu from me. So I told her, it's okay. You don't have to kiss me, but I understand. Just can't help us. So. Yeah, she started maybe like 2 days ago. So right now she's in the real bad part of it. So and of course we're taking care of our son, who is still a long ways in recovering from his injury. So, all right. So I want to talk to us, to you, to Sukkot about a whole heart. In the context of who we are as a community that is growing in the gifts of the Spirit and in the prophetic. As we saw, it has a lot to do with it. It has a lot to do with where do we take each other in our ministry? Do we take each other to the heart of the Father? So, Deuteronomy 6, well known. We're going to begin in verse 1. The Shema. Some of us can even say it in Hebrew. So beginning in verse 1, though, it says, "Now this is the commandment, the statutes, and the judgments." Oh, you know me. I got to stop right here. I got to stop right here, right? So here's the statutes. It's the chukim. We've talked a lot about the chukim. The judgments are the mishpatim. So the judgments, or the mishpatim, is what we call the civil commandments, right? Where if I lend you my ox, and for some reason it died in your hand, the Torah, it's going to talk about that, and I can take you to court, or all of those things. That's the judgments. But it has to do with how well we love one another in community, how we care for each other. This is I'm thinking of the word the Lord gave me earlier in the service about the house. What is a house? It's a place where there are sons and daughters, where they care for each other, right? They care for each other. And that's the purpose of the mishpatim, of the judgments. Not only that we make sure that nobody gets away with murder here, but even way, way beyond that, it's a positive thing that we love, that we care for each other's property with what the Lord has given to each other. And so there's more that we can say about that. The statutes, the chukim, these are the worship commandments. And so we see the Shema right there. To love the Lord your God, the chukim, the worship commandments, and to love your neighbor as yourself, the relational commandments, the judgments. That's the real Torah. But then it begins by saying, this is the commandment. What is that all about? Well, if you've been through our Torah study, And when we went through Deuteronomy, we talked a lot about this. The commandment in the Deuteronomy is the Shema, is to love the Lord your God. So we keep reading. The commandment, the statutes, and the judgment which the Lord your God has commanded me to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you are going over to possess it, so that you and your son and your grandson might fear the Lord your God, to keep all his statutes, right, the worship commandments, and his commandments, as a reference to the 10 Commandments, which I am commanding you all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged, your physical life. O Israel, you should listen, Shema. So there is the Shema even before the Shema, right? In verse 3. O Israel, you should listen and be careful to do it. So you should listen to it and be careful to do it, that it may be well with you and that you may multiply greatly, just as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you in a land flowing with milk and honey. So we get to verse 4, the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. The Lord is one. He alone is God. You shall love the Lord your God. And he's going to tell us what with. Not just how to love him, but what with. You shall love the Lord your God with, and with, and with, 3 times. We know the passage. The first one is with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. Whatever understanding we have of heart, soul, and might, the real key word here is all. All. This seems to me like it is an all or nothing proposition. And it's really hard to put this into a way that we can count it, into a way that we can, make an app for it and tell me, okay, how much did I love the Lord today? With all of my heart, with, what percentage? And it's going to calculate my percentage rate of love and how I did everything today. So it's going to tell me, your number is 52%. And I'm like, I got to work on this love thing. I'm not loving the Lord with all my heart. I'm kind of halfway there. I don't think it works that way. That's why we can't make this app, because it will be way too easy. It will be like yes or no. With all or nothing. And it sounds kind of rough. It sounds kind of like why try, if it's going to be so hard. Well, here's the thing. The Lord is so gracious that even in your best moment, and I know that because I'm the same way, even in my best moments, I can look back and realize, yeah, that wasn't fully with all my heart. If I have to be honest, even in my best days. Because the truth is that we have the flesh, and we still have things that are even hidden to ourselves, right? In our spiritual maturity, we're not even aware of everything that the Lord still wants to work in us and out of us. But that's the grace of the Lord. He does know. He knows the real percentage. And he says, I will accept your love for me today because you are doing it to the best of your knowledge today, to the best of your ability today. I'm asking you to give me your all as you understand it today. And I'm going to give you the increase. I'm going to help you understand tomorrow what all means tomorrow. And in a new year, I'm going to understand what all means in a new year, in a new month, in a new week, in a new Shabbat. You know, last night I was working all day yesterday on just getting ahead on writing my thesis. As you know, I'm graduating this May with master's degree in theology, and really in the Torah. I took all of my specialty courses on the Tanakh, on the Hebrew Scriptures. So I'm writing, as most of you know, I'm writing my thesis on the Toldot, the phrases in the book of Genesis that organize, that structure the whole book, right? And so my professor, of course, he's, worried that I'm taking too big of a bite. And he wants me to, you need to shrink this. And, are you sure you can say all of this? And that's his job. And so I just let him talk, All right, let me explain to you now. And so I was working on chapter 2 yesterday. This is a 2-semester deal. So this past semester, in the fall, we wrote everything. You learn how to research and all that stuff, and you complete chapter 1. That's the goal in that first semester. The second semester, then you finish the rest of it. But in the first semester, you already set everything up. You have all your chapters and the content of each chapter. You have an outline and a summary of each chapter. So I know what I'm supposed to write for each chapter. So I'm going ahead of myself because I love it. This is what I wanted to do, and I love you know me. I love this. And so I spent the whole day yesterday writing chapter 2, which is getting now deep into Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. So when Shabbat comes around, the law of inertia wants to keep going, right? And so we did the candles, and we welcomed the Shabbat, and my mind doesn't want to stop. My mind wants to go back because I was like, I'm about to get into chapter 3, and this is like, and as I was thinking about that, I realized any wisdom that I may have, it's not mine, it's the Lord's. So how can I presume that I'm going to cut myself off from Him? In other words, I'm going to say no to what He's speaking to me, right? He's speaking Shabbat, He's speaking rest, He's speaking cease. You realize it's not just resting as in I'm tired and I need to rest. Many times it's that way, but not always. It's not just rest, it is cease. Stop. I don't care where you're at in your little book that you're writing. It's not about whether you still have energy to keep going. It's about lordship. If I say this is enough for today, is that enough for you? That's what Shabbat is about. So I, of course, went back to that understanding, and I said, absolutely, I have no business writing a single word cut off from you. And so I put everything away and never looked back. That is, in that moment, it was my way of loving Him with all my heart. My temptation wasn't to pick up the computer and keep writing. my temptation was to keep thinking about chapter 3 and making my points and what am I going to write. That was my temptation. And that, if I would have done that, my love certainly would not have been with all of my mind, with all of my attention, with all of my heart. And that's what he desires, a whole heart, a full attention. I know of nothing, and Scripture backs this up. I know of nothing that can align us with the heart of the Father, collect all of who we are, and bring it into alignment and perspective. There's nothing better than the prophetic. Because the prophetic is such a combination of the manifestation of the presence and the word. That's why it's so powerful. It is the manifestation of the supernatural that has a word, that has an instruction, that puts you at ease, that brings, again, that collects all of who you are, all of your parts that need to come together under his lordship so that you can move to whatever he wants you to move next. Detached from whatever you attach yourself to. Maybe even if the attachment was good. I was perfectly fine writing my thesis until it was Shabbat time. Then it wasn't good for me to continue that attachment. He wanted me to turn around, turn to his face. And a prophetic word does that. It cuts clean. It makes a clean cut to regather our hearts and all of who we are and bring it under his lordship. That's why the Shema and the prophetic, they go together. The prophetic is such an aid to the Shema. It gathers your heart to focus and to love him with all your heart. Does that make sense? I thought that would bless you. Let's go to Luke chapter 18. Beginning in verse 18. I'm going to read a couple of verses here in Luke 18:18, and then we'll go to Matthew 6, and we'll conclude with Matthew 6. Luke 18:18 says, a ruler questioned him, Yeshua, of course, saying, "Good teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" And Yeshua said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. Are you really calling me God?" Verse 20. You know the commandments. Do not commit adultery. Do not murder. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Honor your father and mother, etc. And the man said, all these things I have kept from my youth. In other words, I've loved the Lord your God with all my heart and with all my soul and with all my might. And what are you going to do? Are you going to get into a discussion with a person, when they're telling you their testimony? You're not going to win. This is what they've experienced. This is what they believe, and they're convinced. I've obeyed these things since I was a kid. I love it that Yeshua didn't go all sarcastic on him. I would have totally gone sarcastic on this dude. But he's a better man than me. So he says, verse 21, verse 22. When Yeshua heard this, he said to him, one thing you still lack. Sell all that you possess, distribute it to the poor, and you shall have treasure in heaven, and come follow me. And scripture said that the man turned away sad. The Son of God, talk about God manifested, right? The presence of God. The Son of God gave him a word, a prophetic word, to help him cut cleanly with the attachments that were gripping his heart. And he said no. He said no to the prophetic word. I can picture the demons rushing to grab hold of this guy. Stronghold. Sad. You see, in the Jewish world, to love the Lord with all your might means to love the Lord with all your wealth, with your ability to make wealth. And so, this is the me part. Remember how Paul says, okay, this is a commandment of the Lord. But this part of it here, that's just me. Right? Of course, the Holy Spirit was saying, oh, you may be thinking that's you, pal, but this goes into the scripture. So guess what? That's Spirit inspired. So I'm not saying my part is inspired, not at all. But this is my part where I want to speak to you for just a couple minutes, if you give me a couple minutes. And I want to talk to you about, you ready for it? I want to talk to you about tithing. Because I think this is a door that as we move as a congregation further and further into the prophetic, we need to close down this door. If there is an opening through which the enemy can gain a foothold, I want you and me to not have this door open, to close this door. In case you don't know, I don't handle the finances at Sukkot. I don't get to see who and how much. And I set it up that way intentionally so that I can tell you this intentionally. So that anytime I talk about this, you know I'm not talking to you. So I'm free. I can preach on giving and tithing and all of this. And you cannot say, oh, well, he saw how much I didn't give. Or, you can, because I don't know, and I'm telling you. That's how we set it up with the elders. So I'm speaking here, and I have no idea where you're at. I'm just operating from a burden that I want us to move into this, into what we are moving as a congregation with this door closed. Because I know what it can do when it is open. I lived it. I lost the house. I lost everything that I didn't tithe on. Painful lessons. And I don't want anyone here to go through that. Matthew 6:21, and I'm going to end with this. this. 6:21, it says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Of course, every preacher is going to talk about this, right? Going to bring this verse up. We usually quote this backwards. And we have it in our mind that wherever my money is, that's where my treasure is. But if you read the scripture, it's the other way around. I need to first look, where is my money, to find out where my heart really is. Because I may say my heart is with you, my heart is here or there or over there, but I need to submit myself to an audit for somebody else to tell me, no, guess what? That's not where your heart is. Because your money is telling me that your heart is somewhere else. So look at where the money is first. That's where your heart is. So what I'm saying is this. If it is your intention for your heart to be here at Sukkot, but your money isn't, you may want to correct that. Again, now I'm not checking, right? I'm not going to stand in the line, right, at Oneg and say, oh, hang on. You know, that delicious cake from last week, you can't eat of this one. You know, you first need to. But I'm saying that if it really is your intention, then bring a whole heart, a whole soul, and a whole strength, your whole wealth. Bring your whole tithe. I used to believe all kinds of lies about tithing. As you know, I used to work overseas, serving, with an international organization, planting congregations among indigenous tribes. And I didn't think that I was supposed to tithe. I'm supposed to receive the tithe. I'm not supposed to tithe. And in the back of my mind, I knew this wasn't true. But you see, I received so little. How could I tithe? It wasn't even enough for myself. How can I even? Right, Lord? Right? And I came across people that will split their tithe. Uh-oh, am I stepping on your toes? When I came to Sukkot, I was splitting my tithe. We were still at Gateway Church, and at the beginning here, Mama Helen was still working on me, right? Every week, you have to come back. You have to come back. And there came the point where I was like, no, I have to let go of the fear of what's going to happen if I, do whatever. And so I follow the Lord, and I said, I am here. I am here. I understand some of you are in that situation. You come here, and you also have a church. And I've made it clear, I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. But I think that's a temporary thing. I think at some point you got to be fully immersed in one water or another so that you can really be fruitful and take off. And we are moving into some serious kingdom business. I'm going to start a series next week called The Gospel of the Kingdom. You may think you've heard this, but I'm going to bring some stuff that I really end time Gospel of the Kingdom things. John the Baptist cut your head off, Gospel of the Kingdom thing, right? Not your televangelist Gospel of the Kingdom. But I want to encourage you. Your whole tithe in one place. Trust God with the rest. Tithe is not offerings. You can give offerings as much as you're blessed, as much as you can, as much as the Lord blesses you, as much as He leads you. You can give anywhere else. We do. But that's not the tithe. The tithe is whole, and it goes into one place. The rest is offering or whatever I want to call it. In this, you can test the Spirit's voice, obviously. Don't do what I say or don't get upset for what I say. Just take it to the Lord and ask Him, what are you saying? Are you speaking to me? I want you whole. I remember I asked a guy one time, am I your pastor? I knew the answer. And he was honest, and he said, nope. But I'm here to help, I'm like, no, it's good. I don't want your hand. I told him, I don't want your hand, and I don't want your wallet. I want your heart. I know if I have your heart, I have your hand, and I have your wallet. And that didn't last too long. He found his way somewhere else. This was actually in the congregation we were starting at my home. Remember, you guys? I don't know if you've met Rafael and Cece, but that was the time we were starting Spanish work in my home. One of the many attempts of the pre-Sukkot attempts until the Lord brought us together and did this. But that was part of what happened, and that's what I want for you. That God has your whole heart. That Sukkot has your whole heart. If that's where your heart is supposed to be planted, and that it is whole and not fragmented. Does that make sense? Amen.